I
It
think you
sounds
did
good.
too. So
Is there any
apparently,
rules? Any rules before we start,
no,
gents?
we're
Oh
just gonna
yeah.
chat. I think the only
Oh,
rule is
okay.
people who aren't me or STK or
Uh
Trini.
huh.
I don't know what he wants to go by. I think people who aren't us don't talk. I think that's the only rule really.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds fine by me.
Um, yeah, okay, and apparently we know each other. Do you remember a conversation with someone called Red Bat Media?
Yeah. Yeah, I've met the guy before.
Do you remember you and I having a conversation together with him where we were like showing problems in his view or something?
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to you like 2 different times before. I also talked to you way back when I think about abortion, like around the original time that you opened up your Discord server, and then I think we talked about like race and IQ.
Oh no, yeah. Okay, yeah. I used to talk sometimes about shit like that, but
Hmm.
I think I had some confusion around that subject. That's sorry, I don't remember these fucking conversations.
No, I didn't expect you to. You have like thousands of them, so I don't blame you.
I mean, thousands might be an overstatement, but I have lots of them. But okay, yeah. So this is sort of what I wanted to take up about the video, and
Hmm.
it's a disagreement. There's really like two of them,
Okay.
but we'll see if we can kind of keep it positive here.
Okay.
Given that apparently we have in the past. Not that I fucking actually I don't know that. Did we start yelling at each other the last time we spoke?
No, I think we've had mostly cordial interactions actually.
Well, there you go. Okay, good. Um, okay, so the first thing is that like this video, it seems to be built around attacking this syllogism that presumably you take this to be representative of my position because you have it written as like ask yourself's basic argument.
Yeah, so what I took your position to be was more or less one of skepticism of her ability to actually prove anything she said. What I thought you did was you presented kind of a devil's advocate argument to probe that, to see whether or not she could actually disprove something like that.
Okay,
Correct?
so there not really.
Mm,
There's a slight confusion there. So like I didn't actually give an argument if you watch that video. And there's moves you could make there where you say like, okay, sure, you didn't like explicitly lay out like premises and a conclusion, but
mhm.
even if I grant that, this is still representative of your view, right? And actually, even at that level, it's not. Like I could raise a few things, but like just a deal breaker is like I don't affirm that second premise.
Yeah, I'm not even saying that you actually believe this. I'm not clear on what your beliefs are regarding this topic. Like I said, what I thought was the case is that you kind of implicitly put this out there, is what I understood your position to be. Basically, that if it was irreducibly normative, there has to be some underlying inherent norm that's out of accord with racism and also simultaneously rationality. Now, obviously, I don't know if you actually believe this or not, but I took this to be the implicit argument. And so I guess we
Yes.
can kind of quibble about whether or not this was your intention, but this is absolutely what I thought you were implying as kind of a probing argument.
Well, I don't think we have to quibble over it if we like because we agree. Like, I mean, presumably you're not going to sit here and tell me that this is my position if I tell you actually that I don't sign off on part of it, right? Like this is just a kind of best attempt to like summarize what you think my view is.
Well, it's not even that I thought it was your view, right? I think you can make an argument without it being your view. Like I basically made that argument to kind of test it out, right? And see what I thought of it. So it's not that I per se think that it's even your belief or your view. It's merely that I thought you just put that out there kind of into the ether to see whether or not she could just prove something along those lines. If you don't agree, I'm not even saying this is your position. I'm just saying that I thought you put that out there as kind of a test.
I'll just say because Avi just came in here, we're just only
Mm-hmm.
me and Trini are going to talk here, Avi. Yeah, so I didn't actually. So I understand you're saying you don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily think it's my view. You think that
It was like a
nonetheless,
litmus test.
I
Yeah.
implied it as like a devil's advocate kind of argument.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so even that's not actually the case. Like I don't like for me, it's like I didn't actually put out any kind of argument in that video, and this isn't like representative of like any kind of like devil's advocate position I would try to run because that second premise that would be like really fucking hard to establish. Like I wouldn't like run something like that. Like the big thing here is this premise too, racism does neither. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that's something that it's like my doxastic state there is going to be similar to like around belief in God, right? It's like I'm not making the claim God doesn't exist. I'm just not convinced of the claim that he does, right? Like I'm not making the claim that racism does neither of these things. I'm saying I'm not convinced that it does. So
Well, we're arguing about your intention here, and like I said, I mean, we could quibble about that. I already said before, it's not that I think this is your intention. That wasn't my claim either. If you think that I'm just saying that for the sake of saying that, that's fine. But fact of the matter is, like, we're just kind of at an impasse here. I mean, if you have something that you think like definitively proves you are not making that argument on some implicit level, like you could present it, but otherwise, I mean, it's just kind of speculative.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm telling you it's not my position, and it's not an argument I was making. So is you like, are you telling me that you're going to just, what? Hey Google, shut up. Sorry. Hey Google, stop. 1 second. Should also turn off my aircon. Yeah. So no, like this isn't like representative of like my thinking here. Is all I'm saying. And like I understand that you watched the video and this was your takeaway, and I don't think it's like a radically like unreasonable takeaway or something, but I'm just clarifying like this isn't actually my view. So we're only at an impasse if you're saying that you're going to like insist that you like know my views better than me or something.
Well, I didn't even say it was your view, so I think that would be a misunderstanding of what I said. What I'm saying is it felt like that implicit argument was made as kind of a litmus test. And so it's like the Socratic method, right? So for instance, if someone asks you a certain type of question, obviously there will be an underlying implication. Now, I think in this case, you were implying an argument for the sake of saying whether or not she could. I think you even said the exact words of she couldn't possibly defend this. And so what I take that to mean is you're very skeptical of her defeating an argument that you might even see as very unreasonable or potentially untenable, but it's hers. So you find it very difficult to believe that she could defend it because from what I understand, you just are very skeptical of her philosophical capacity in general.
Well, it is true that I'm skeptical of her philosophical capacity in general, but
Okay.
all I want to clear up. So when I say not my position, I'm including in that like a position I would run as like a devil's advocate kind of thing. Like it's not my view. It's not a view that I would run as a devil's advocate position. I just like, do you grant that, or are you kind of like insisting it's my view?
No, I'm not insisting it's your view. Like I said, that was ever my thing. I just thought you put that out there to see whether or not she could test it. That's all. If you disagree with that, that's just the takeaway I had. Like, it's like the Socratic method, like I said. I think that if you ask a certain kind of questions, there will be questions. I don't think that necessarily even means you believe them, but I think you are putting out there as like a form of skepticism, right? It's almost like it's like the Cartesian demon. Like Descartes might not actually believe this, but he's putting out there to probe beliefs, basically.
Okay, but I'm telling you this is not a devil's advocate argument that like I'm running. So do you accept that, or are you insisting that it is?
I feel like it was. I don't know if that was your intention to do that. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so it's not my intention, and I mean I don't know, like I guess I don't know what to say when it reaches a level of like someone is kind of like insisting that your view is some like let's just be totally clear. I'm telling you that this is not my view. Are you saying this is that this is my view or my devil's advocate position or something like that?
I'm saying, I'm saying that you've implied some devil's advocate argument. I don't think you did it on purpose based on what you're saying, but it absolutely comes off like that. Like I think you can accidentally imply certain arguments. That happens all the time, right?
Okay,
like certain people imply things that entail stuff.
Right, but I'm not questioning if I've already told you that I don't think it's radically unreasonable for you to take something like that away, but I'm clarifying that that's not what I'm doing. So like this should be like
or like just as far as you can tell. Well, okay, if you definitively think that, I would presume there's some like external evidence or something, right?
As definitively as one can like be aware of their own like mental states or something. Like it seems like this is like a weird thing to get caught up on. Like I'm just telling you, this is not what's in my mind. Like this argument here, not my position, not a position I'd run as like a devil's advocacy kind of thing.
Yeah, and you could unconsciously do things, and I feel like that was unconsciously something done here. You know?
Okay, like, and you can say that. Sorry, it's a little frustrating. I'm trying not to get frustrated, but you can say that. But holding my feet to the fire for it is just it's attacking. Like, let's just be clear. Okay, this is what I want you to grant. If you were to say that this is my position or my devil's advocate position, you agree that would be a straw man of my view because I'm telling you I'm not making this argument.
I never claimed it was your view. For me to be straw manning, you would have to
Okay,
assert that's your view, which I've said from the outset.
Wait a second. Wait a second. Well, there's two things. So first of all, the video does say ask yourself basic argument, but setting that aside, right? The straw man, I'm just saying, is if it were taken to be representative of my view, right? Which I think is reasonable given it says ask yourself's argument with a colon, then this argument, right?
But you can make an argument like we established without like meaning to or actually believing in it.
Okay,
right?
But wait a second, please. We gotta not get so nippy. So let me just catch my train of thought, because if you cut in like that, I can lose my thoughts easily. I have ADD.
Okay, my bad. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Cut in if I'm misrepresenting you or something, but just let's not just cut each other off all the time when we don't have to. Yeah. So you can like try to say that I have thoughts that I'm not aware of, and those unaware thoughts are like this argument or some shit like that. But like, just to be clear, like if someone were to say, this is my position, right? This is the argument that I'm delivering. We understand that that would be a straw man, right? Unless you want to, you can argue someone has beliefs they aren't aware of, right? But in terms of, if you look at what I actually think, what I would actually put forward, right? Let's just be clear. I would not sign off on this. I would not run this as devil's advocate if you actually put this argument to me and asked me to do so, okay? So we understand if someone were to say, it's my position, meaning I would do either of those things, that would be a straw man, right?
And so just to be clear, I want to give you a yes or no so you don't feel like I'm dodging. Yes, that would be a straw man if I said that was your position. What I'm trying to clarify is I'm not stating that's your position. I'm stating that I thought that was an implicit argument you made. I don't know if you made it by accident or not, but I'm not saying you made an argument which you believed in or that you affirm or that you actually outright assert in some doxastic sense. What I am saying is that I thought you implied it. So basically what I'm just saying is I thought it was maybe an accident or something, but I wanted to address it. Sometimes people will make arguments that have certain entailments or certain views or certain implications, even by accident. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Sometimes you'll say stuff that you don't even believe.
Okay.
Right?
But sure, but I did not say this. Right? Like I don't understand why we're hung up on this. Like I'm glad you grant.
Yeah, we agreed on that from the outset.
Okay, so we grant that I don't say this, that I don't sign off on this. If anyone says this is my position, that's just a straw man of my position. We agree on all that, right?
Yeah, we can say that's not your position. Yeah, I'm perfectly okay with that.
Okay, cool. So and then obviously following from that, any attack on this position is like not going to be. I mean, it's just analytic. It's not going to be.
Yeah, I thought it was like a challenge, right? So, like for instance, Seth in here, you know Seth, right?
Yeah.
He's argued for the ethicality of pedophilia, and then he's made arguments in favor of that he'll defend within a given argument. But I don't think that, for instance, he's actually some kind of like pedophile apologist or anything like that, right? So I think you can defend certain things without believing in them. And I think even in those arguments, he's accidentally defended things. And so that's what I'm saying. You can defend them in the midst of an argument. Maybe you were just trying to insult her, and so you accidentally like made some kind of argument. Just kind of like oh, you're so stupid. You could never even challenge something this simple, right?
Well, no, Trini, like you're extracting what you believe is my intention, right? And I'm telling you,
I'm not saying it's intention. Yeah.
Okay, well, what you believe is going on in my mind, right? Like, I'm just saying, you're like, there's something really weird going on here. Of like, when you say I might have made an argument without realizing it, it's like, I don't really know what that means, except that someone else misinterpreted me, right? Like, my intention is not to make this argument, and I take it that my meaning is just whatever I intend, right? Yeah. So as long as we agree that this is not representative of my view, it's not representative of a devil's advocate position that I'd run, it's not representative of anything I said in that video.
Second thing, when you say that you'd run, sure, actually, I'll agree with that one in particular. I don't think you were doing it on purpose, but it's like with the Seth thing, right?
No, but you're still sorry.
Can
I cut in there? Okay,
go for it.
That's a place I want to cut in, because you keep saying I don't think you did it on purpose. The implication is I still did it, right? But
exactly.
I don't understand
from the outset.
Yeah, but I don't understand what it means to say I did it if that doesn't just mean you misinterpreted me, because I take it that what I did is going to be determined by my intentions, right?
You don't believe in the unconscious mind?
I don't see how that's even relevant.
You don't think you can act on underlying dispositions and not just solely intentions?
Yes, I think that you can. Sure,
Yeah, so
but
that's
wait,
irrelevant, right? That's up
no,
to sole determination.
wait a second. When it comes to what? Well, wait. You're trying to say that I'm. So when you say making an argument, you really mean that
I mean, just putting
I.
one forward. Yeah.
Well, we have to. Well, one second. You mean that I actually have beliefs that I'm not aware of from which you can construct this argument. That's what you're trying to say?
No.
Okay, then I don't understand what you mean when you say I made this argument. How did I make it?
You accidentally asserted an argument.
I don't think I did. I didn't give premises
I
on a
know, and I
conclusion.
said from
didn't
the
say any of
outset
this.
that I think this is just a room of speculation. I mean, if you want to talk about this, we can. But like I said, I think it's just outright speculative. This is just what I thought you were implying.
Okay, but you're saying
Huh?
you're saying you thought I was implying it. So do you
I thought it
now
was clear from
understand
the
that?
get-go, like I'm asserting it.
Well, it seems like there's a bit of back and forth.
Mhm.
It seems like sometimes you're saying that I made this argument, and other times you're saying you thought I made this argument.
Well,
Those
both
things
of those are
aren't
the same thing, right? Like
n-
I'm asserting
not
that it's true.
okay. So when you say made this argument, what do you think it means to say I made it if I had like no
Uh-huh.
if my intention was not to convey it?
You accidentally asserted this argument. You
What it,
accidentally.
what it,
Uh-huh.
what does it mean
Go
to
ahead.
say yeah, just but what does that mean though? How have I asserted this argument?
I think you accidentally laid out reasons to be skeptical,
Wait,
like
but
of her
asserted
ability to challenge this argument,
wait,
right?
but wait, but when you say laid out is also kind of vague. Like when you say I
Mhm.
asserted it, right? Like it's a bunch of propositions. What are you saying I did to those propositions? That I believed them? That I spoke other propositions that entailed them? Like what are you trying to say?
So I think you asked questions that put forward these propositions that, in an ultimate sense, were supposed to imply some kind of conclusion which she would find very difficult for her to challenge.
Okay. Wait,
Yeah.
I think I understand. So correct me if
Mhm.
I'm still not understanding, but you're saying when you say I made this argument, you're saying that I put out, I stated other propositions that entail the propositions that make this argument.
No, I gather that from questions because I don't even. Well, okay. So what you specifically said, this is what I'm referring to. So number one, you were like, okay, I don't believe that she can challenge this kind of like thing, right? You were essentially saying that if you want me to get the specific quotes, I can just read through the caption transcript on your video. But basically, what you said was you would find it so crazy. You found it basically impossible for her to challenge some kind of view like this, or essentially to defend the view that she has, right? Which is in opposition to the view that I think you're asserting the conclusion of. And so
What
when you're, go ahead.
well, what I said is that I don't understand how she would argue for the conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand is when you say I made this argument, I think it's kind of loose language. Like made it certainly doesn't mean I directly stated these propositions. It
Yeah, I've
apparently
said
also
from the outset it
doesn't.
was implicit. Yep.
Yeah, it apparently also doesn't mean that I even intended these propositions. So, and
Correct.
if it also doesn't mean that I stated other propositions that entail these I just don't know what you mean when you say I made the argument.
Okay. So essentially what I'm saying is when you ask certain questions, right, they seem to imply something. Like, so for instance, what underlying rational norm would she be out, or would some hypothetical person be out of accord with if they're racist? Like, what norms are at
Yeah.
conflict here, right?
Can I ask something? Are you saying
Uh,
are you saying that implies that there are no such norms?
I'm saying that, yeah, that's what it feels like. You're putting that out as a
Okay,
challenge. Mhm.
but then so if you saying that I made this argument relies on that implication, that's
Yep.
going to require an argument. Do you have an argument for that?
Wait, I didn't say that I knew this, right? So you can say that I need an argument. I never claimed to know this.
Well,
What I
wait.
did say,
Do you think that you can
Mhm.
even raise the probability of that being true, like above like 50%?
I mean, what you're asking is, do I know this? I think it's true, right? Never did I claim that I had
Well,
some
I'm
sound
asking
argument
if
for
you
this, did
can.
I?
I'm asking if you can justify it, really.
Okay, and then I can just ask you the same, right? Can you justify that is not what you said? Now, presumably, you have an argument, right?
I could say I was agnostic, right? You're actually
Okay,
making a
prove that.
claim there, right?
Wait, prove that you were agnostic. That's a claim. You
Wait,
were making a doxastic claim. You were claiming that you had a particular lack of mental state. Prove that.
how am I to wait a second? I feel like that was a gun
You were
jump
gonna ask
right
the same
there.
thing that I said, right? You were gonna ask how you prove your
one
belief.
second, one second. You're going
Okay.
too fast. We have to be slow here. So what you said is that by making this argument, what you mean is that I stated a proposition that wait, in fact, now I don't even remember what you said. I stated a proposition that entails this, or are you saying something other than that?
Okay, what I'm saying is you asked a question which seemed to raise that as a challenge, right?
Oh, you think
Yes.
that asking the question implies that I have the belief.
Not that you
so
have the belief.
If I ask what norms, that implies that I believe there are no.
No, not even that you believe it, just that you are wondering whether or not she could in some way attack a claim like that.
Yeah, that's right. But I'm talking about you have to actually get to the propositions in this argument, though, right? To say I made this argument, you have to somehow get to this positive claim. Racism does neither, right? I'm asking, what did I say that entails that?
The question. That's what I took it to be. I mean,
yeah, I understand, but like, if
right?
But I'm telling you, that's not like, look, as far as I'm aware, I don't sense any shit like that in my head, right? If you're saying, so when you say that if I ask what norm would that person be out of accord with by being racist, right? You want to say that means what? That I believe that there's no such norm or not?
No, I'm saying what you do believe is you're skeptical of her ability to challenge such an argument, right? So I thought you were laying out implicit propositions by being like, okay, like what if someone said this? Could you really actually disagree? Are you the kind of person that's capable of disagreement? That's what I think.
No, so just to be clear, this second proposition here, are you saying that this is entailed by something I said or not?
I'm saying it's entailed by your question, so yes.
Okay, so there's one problem there of like a question can't actually be, you can't really put it into an argument and derive things from it.
No, I'm not saying the question itself is an argument. I'm saying it implies a proposition. Right?
Well, it's weird though, because technically, like, you can't say this implies that if one of them isn't propositional and a question isn't a proposition.
I don't mean imply in like a logical conditional sense or anything like that. I mean imply in like the colloquial connotative sense of I think this is what you're getting at.
Are you saying you think that's what I believe?
No, I think what you believe. Yeah, this is what I believe.
Wait.
You believe she couldn't challenge. That's what I'm saying. And then about go ahead.
Wait, but the getting at it's so weird because like this is what it feels like right now, Trini. It feels like you're trying to tell me, you're trying to say in some way that I'm like making this argument, and I'm trying to just go, I'm not, and it seems like we're not agreeing about that. So I'm trying to understand what do you mean when you say I made it, and you're not saying I directly stated these propositions.
Correct.
You're not saying I believe these propositions.
Correct.
And you're saying that they're implied by other statements that I made?
Yeah, that's not that crazy. So for instance,
wait, but
go ahead.
To say that they're implied, what does that mean though? If they're questions, right? If it's how does a question imply, like does it imply that I have a given belief? Like, what do you mean when you say it implies something?
Okay, so like if right now you would just ask me, are you being stupid on purpose, right? I'd be like, okay, so he's trying to call me stupid, correct? Now you can say the differentiator is belief.
Wait.
Yeah, understanding of belief, right?
Right. You'd be presumably saying what I would take you to mean if you said I implied you're stupid. I take it you'd be saying that my underlying belief is showing, right? Like I have a belief. Yeah, but that's saying it is the case that I have.
But I'm not saying that's the parallel. The parallel that I'm making is that you can accidentally like make some sort of question that seems to more or less reveal some quote unquote hidden, not so hidden for some people, like belief or statement or curiosity or thought. And so that's just the first. I just want to make sure that we've established that we understand that you can have certain questions that do get at certain, and when I say get at, I mean that seem to imply or seem to suggest particular ideas, right? So that's just the first part.
That's not what we're arguing about, though, right? I told you I don't think it's radically unreasonable.
Okay. So then the second thing,
beliefs like this.
Yeah, so then the second thing would just be, so for instance, right, if we could agree on the question thing of like some sort of implied belief, if someone goes, hey, I think I could really defend that racism is wrong, right? It'd be like,
Mhm.
I mean, are you sure that you can? Like, obviously implying, and that's what I think it's more up the alley of. Like, you're very skeptical that she can challenge such a proposition. Like, I mean,
I
well,
am. No, that's right. Yeah, sorry,
yes. So
we're looping
I
a
take
bit
it
because
equivalently to like, I take it equivalently to you saying like,
that's
oh,
not
are
the
you
me too though,
really sure?
Trini.
Yeah, but I
That,
take it as you
yeah,
saying, are you really sure you could like, go against something like that? So when you say
yeah.
racism isn't a proposition itself. Racism is wrong as a proposition, but I'm more or less getting at the looseness of natural language to begin with. I'm saying that this is what I'm getting from my understanding of your use of natural language. That's all.
Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not telling you that that's some like radically unreasonable takeaway, but when I'm just trying to say, when you say I implied this argument, what that means is really this is what you took away. It doesn't mean I actually have the beliefs. It doesn't mean that I stated these propositions, and it doesn't mean I stated anything that entails these propositions. It just means that's the takeaway that
Mm-hmm.
you had.
Yeah. That's what I said from
Okay.
the outset. Yeah. I admit that it's
Okay.
speculative. Right? I'm not saying that I have some sound deductive argument which will necessarily determine that you actually believe this without a singular shadow of doubt. No, I'm just saying that that's the impression I got, and merely that.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
do you still have that impression now that we've spoken about it and I've read the exact proposition and said, okay, when I question my beliefs, I am not finding that in there. And in fact, my doxastic state here
That's
is
what I thought from the
agnostic.
get-go. Like, if you want, I can show you the Google Doc where I originally wrote this. The only reason I put basic argument wasn't to say that this is your belief. Like, if I put basic position, and maybe that's like the looseness thing that we were just establishing. If I had said your basic position, I think that what you're saying would make a lot more sense. But I used the word argument so as to be like, okay, this is like a devil's advocate argument. I don't actually think so. In fact, I think people in the comments literally asked, like, wow, is he like racist or something? And I think he even commented, like, no, I think it's more like he's just putting this up. But I think it's a really like weird thing to put up.
Okay. Well, for the
Mhm.
record, I would make the same kind of claims with like speciesism or sexism or whatever. Like these are all things that I don't
Yeah, you
like,
think they're like
right?
subjective norms. No, I get that.
Yeah, like you understand like this might all maybe it's all stemming from a bigger divide of are you like a moral realist?
I am, but I
Yeah.
actually came at this video from not the perspective of a moral realist because I thought it was superfluous. My basic thing is
Yeah.
just I don't even think normativity here is really like meaningful because presumably what we mean by rationality is your ability to fit into some rational norms, but I don't even think we need to get to that because I think it's the
Okay,
second thing
what
that I'd address, which is just
wait. We're
possessing
going
all
around a
true
bit too
beliefs. Oh, my bad. Go ahead. Go
we're
ahead.
going around a bit too much. Well, wait, no, I think someone can be rational and have false beliefs. So we probably also have a different understanding of rationality. Like I don't think people in the past who had like wrong scientific beliefs were like necessarily irrational. They might have had the beliefs that were
You would
rational.
say they're perfectly rational?
Wait, I'm not saying any human is perfectly rational,
No, no,
but
no.
I wouldn't say
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, like when you say perfectly rational, presumably you mean also possesses all like correct beliefs with sound reasoning, right? Or at least that's
not
what I take
not
it to be.
not necessarily. I
Okay.
think that yeah, it seems like possible for someone to be perfectly rational and to have false beliefs. But if you say someone's like perfectly rational and has all knowledge, then maybe that's not possible. But either way, that's kind of
Mhm.
cascading off into like what we might mean by
Sure.
rationality. We can get there if we need to, but I think we're near. I hope we're near agreeing here. But
Hmm.
okay, so what we agree. So what I'm granting to you is I don't think this is like a radically unreasonable takeaway, right?
Hmm.
Like it's not crazy to me that you watched the video and took away that this is the devil's advocate argument that I'm running and not my actual position. Okay.
Hmm.
But we also, so I agree with you on that. And then what you agree with me on is that I don't have these beliefs. I didn't say anything that in that video or elsewhere that I know of, but at least in that video
Hmm.
that entails these propositions. And that when you say I made this argument by accident, you're really just saying you took this away from what I said, which
Yeah,
again
I've
is
said
not to
from
say
the
you were
outset. Yeah, it's just
yeah,
speculation. I'm not saying this is
okay,
knowledge. I'm not saying this is a fact per se. What I
yeah,
am just saying is that I believe this to be true without some sort of underlying sound reasoning. And so that's what I think about most social interactions. That's kind of like the purpose of like symbolic logic to begin with. Like we want to try and disambiguate a lot of language. So obviously, I understand the natural language can be a little loose like that, and you perfectly could have not meant that, but that could have been my takeaway just due to the ambiguity of natural language. I
Yeah,
understand.
I think that our qualm here has just been at some points talking about your takeaway versus talking about me accidentally making an argument. Because as far as I understand, in your mind, those two things mean
Mhm.
the same thing. And once I think of it like that, I'm like, oh, it's fine. Because when he says I accidentally made this argument, all he means is that he took that from what I said and that it
It's an
wasn't
intuitive impression.
radically, yeah, that it wasn't radically implausible for him to have done so. And that's fine. But I
Mhm.
thought when you say made it by accident, I was taking it that you might be saying something stronger, like that I
Like
actually,
something speaking to your actual beliefs or like
yeah,
an implication of your beliefs. No.
yeah, like that I either have these beliefs or I somehow have them but don't know them, or that I said statements that like entail these
Mhm.
propositions, even if I don't believe them. But as long as, yeah, so I think I think we're agreeing here. We agree none of that's the case. We also agree that you had this as your takeaway and you weren't radically unreasonable to do so.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. So fine. And then just kind of like to sum up the part that's important for me there is if someone, and I'm not throwing this on you, okay, but if someone were to say, this is ask yourself's position, or this is the devil's advocate position he runs, we both agree that person would be wrong. Like it would be
Yeah,
strong.
that person would absolutely be strawmanning. So like obvious,
Okay.
it's similar to like the Seth thing that I mentioned at the beginning, or I myself have argued for things in Devil's Advocate. Like I might argue, for instance, pro-life just for the sake of arguing it, but that doesn't mean any of the arguments I put forward I believe. Or if I accidentally make an argument implying that fetuses aren't actually human, I could totally not believe that, but have made that argument in the context of like an accident because I'm Devil's advocating. I might make arguments that are supposed to be from the perspective of believe that, but I don't actually believe it. It might be just ultimately a test for whether or not the person I'm speaking to is actually capable of dismissing or in some way meaningfully refuting what I've said.
Yeah, you could. Okay, but also we understand there's a distinction when you say accidentally make an argument. You could accidentally make an argument by accidentally actually stating the propositions or stating
Yep.
propositions that entail the propositions in the argument. That's. I'm just pointing out that's a slightly different type of accidentally making an argument than the type where
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. No,
you
they're
don't
not the
believe.
same.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can see where you would get that impression. Like I said, I can see why you had the impression that I made some kind of claim about your actual beliefs or the implications of your beliefs. I don't blame you at all for that. It's the same thing that you said to me. You can see how that's reasonable for me to get a certain takeaway. And I'm saying I get that impression now. Now that you've explained, I can see why you would get that impression. But if you're willing to take my word for it, or at least, listen to my intentions as far as you can trust my honesty, I am affirming that that was not my intention.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I don't think I have a problem with anything that you just said right there. Okay, so we can close this kind of phase of the conversation. And I only
Sure.
had two main points, so that was one of
Okay.
them, and it seems like we agree there. So then the other one is just like, okay, so granting that this isn't my view and that my actual view is I'm just not convinced that there is some kind of
Yeah, I
argument
think
that
you're normally
shows.
skeptical of most stuff. Aren't you like an epistemic skeptic?
um okay, well that's a slightly different position. I don't know that I have a clear like view on epistemic justification.
Okay.
um I mean, I think that there's some kind of contextualism going on about justification,
hmm
um where like well, I mean, this kind of cascading off, like, do you know what contextualism is?
No, but I guess what I'm just trying to say is I normally take it to be the case that you are like, I mean, you're more than well aware that a lot of positions are actually a lot more complicated the deeper you dive into the literature. And I'm more or less the same, although I obviously have maybe stronger, like significantly stronger positions than you do. But I take it to be the case that for most things, you're not convinced that even like the trained philosopher has the best answer. God forbid we're talking about like a layman, like unnatural vegan. So I just assume that you probably see yourself as closer to, just the average person or somewhere in between. And so you just
Well,
imagine, yeah.
yeah, when you say epistemic skepticism, I thought you were talking about, like, when people talk
Mhm.
about like the Munchausen trilemma, and they're like, you can
Yeah.
have like infinitism or coherentism or foundationalism, and they're all
Right.
supposed to have problems, and then skepticism is kind of the alternative. If you reject all of those, like Yeah, I'm not actually really
like you were skeptical of knowledge, so I just I always assumed that you were probably not so quick to claim that you know things, giving your sympathy to this kind of position.
Yeah, I'm a bit, well, yeah, I don't think I have a, I think that, well, this is a kind of an epistemic context thing, right? So like I'll use the word knowledge, but not usually in skeptical context. So like the idea with contextualism is like, say you have some proposition P, it's like whether P is justified is going to be determined by whether there is a sound inference from some starting set of propositions that make up the given epistemic context to P. So like say we had mundane epistemic context, like you're talking about, you know, like what you had for breakfast or something, you tell me like
something ordinary.
Yeah, in fact, a good example is in this conversation when you asked me about like proving my own beliefs, right? It's like there's in a mundane kind of context, we're just gonna grant that a bunch of these things, like the external world exists, people can accurately assess their own thoughts. You know, there's like uniformity in nature. It's just a bunch of that shit is like assumed, right? Like when I ask, like, did you have Cheerios or fucking Lucky Charms? Like, you're not gonna sit there and say, well, like I might not have had either because it could be that I'm a brain and a right. Like it's appropriate to the epistemic context. But then, say we had a skeptical context, where we're having some kind of philosophical discussion or something, and you ask me the same question about what I had for breakfast. Well, then, I mean, the starting set of propositions, like the set that makes up the epistemic context, it's like way smaller. Like you don't get to start with like the external world or like the reliability of your senses or like any of that shit.
Because in that case, we're questioning these assumptions, whereas we're granting those in, like you said, an ordinary context or a mundane context. Yep.
Yes. So whether something is justified is going to be like a feature of the epistemic context, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So when it comes to justification, like, and knowledge, so I'll kind of like use the word knowledge when I'm talking in like, I mean, I'll use it in a contextual sense. I guess sometimes I'll use it in like a skeptical sense, but like really it's like
one
of those words that
convos. Yeah.
I'm a bit skeptical of the like utility of the like concept of knowledge, and I think like when I use it is kind of like a bit contextual. Of like I say no all the time when I have like mundane context kind of things. I'll be like, oh yeah, like I know that like I took a shit like a while ago or whatever, but I'm not gonna use the word like knowledge much in like philosophical conversations because it has baggage and it opens up like kind of like a can of worms. You know what I mean? So sorry for going on for so long, but that's like kind of like
no, I know where you're coming from. Yeah.
So I don't have a theory to answer your question. I don't have a theory of epistemic justification. I think there's some contextualism about it, and I don't really use knowledge that like a whole lot. Okay. All right. So unless you have stuff to say about that, I can kind of like proceed to the other thing about this video.
Oh, no. I understand your perspective. I'm fair with whatever phase of the conversation you want to take it to now.
Yeah. So the only other thing is just I'm not actually convinced that there is an argument for sorry, how do I say this?
Like the negation of that biological racism?
I'm not. One second. Racism does neither. I just need to think about if it's the proposition or its negation. Just give me a second. So doesn't entail a false belief. Right. So so I'm just right. So what I said in the video is I'm not convinced that it that being a racist entails having a false belief or being out of accord with a norm that every rational agent is committed to. Now, I will grant something trivial right away, okay? If you take racism to mean something, if it's like analytic with a false claim, then like, you know, okay, of course. Like if you say you define racism as like, you know, this like false scientific belief that so-and-so, it's like, of course, if that's what's meant by racism, then it's like, of course it's going to entail a false belief. But I think that we're having a different, because that's sort of like the point you made, right? You said racism basically refers to like something like race realism or some kind of like biological essentialism about
etymologically. That's what it's been or that's what it's been taken to mean for a long time, just historically in general. You look at different dictionaries, you look through the definitions of racism. Part of them will be like normative, obviously. Like this idea of superiority of some races over others, right? That's a prerequisite. but it also seems to like dictate certain like descriptions. Like for instance, right, that we have certain ancestries of which we belong to, of which some are superior to others, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I understand that that's a perfectly common usage of racism. And I'm not sure, like I'd need to see some kind of analysis to know about like common usage or what people historically meant. But like there are definitions you can find on like standard kind of sources, like whether you go to like Wikipedia or just like
Hmm.
Cambridge or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like you can find definitions on standard sources that aren't going to be like analytic with some like false claim about biology. So what the compromise that I'm looking for here is if racism is taken to if racism sorry, how do I say this? If when we say racism we're using one of those definitions, yeah, of
Hmm.
course it's just trivial. It's like of course it's going to be, well, I guess it's not trivial because, well,
But it
trivial is
seems to
a
be pretty
technical thing, but
strongly the case, right? It seems very
I
uncontroversial,
oh
right?
yeah, I would agree with it.
Okay.
But then that's half of it though, Trini. The other half that I'm looking for you to
Okay.
agree with, which we might fight about, I guess we'll see.
Okay.
The other half is if someone is not using such a definition, right? Say that they have a categorization schema, like according to which the same people fall in the same boxes. They're going to say the same people are Asian, the same people are
Uh-huh.
black or whatever. And they don't have any of these like false genetic beliefs, right?
Yeah.
In that case, someone who's a racist of that sort, they're not necessarily going to have a false belief or be out of accord with a norm that every rational agent is committed to.
Yeah, I mean, if someone you so I'm gonna say yes against it. It doesn't feel like I'm just dodging. So yes, although I feel like that's trivially true, right? Because I feel as if we redefine any word in any greater academic or even like ordinary context, like obviously we can get very easily a conclusion that we're looking for, unless like there's an argument to be had that someone's willing to make about, for instance, whether or not someone's argument about a particular definition already assumes some sort of accordance, and they might be skeptical about accordance being like accordance relationships being even something that exists. Sure. But what I'm saying is basically like I think in the ordinary context and the broader academic context that I've seen, and I'm not saying that I'm like a race scholar or anything, but as far as I can tell, it seems as if racism has particular descriptions, not even just the prescriptions, but certain descriptions, they're just outright false.
Yeah, well, there are
Yeah.
certain ones that, yeah, well, if we're technical about it, the when you look at the
Hmm.
definition, it's probably not going to like be a proposition, but it's going to say like,
Uh-huh.
but I agree with what you're saying. Like, yeah, there's going to
Okay.
be plenty of standard definitions of racism according to which if one's a
Yeah.
racist, they have a false belief. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you remember
Um,
the part of the video because it's a short video, but I don't know how much attention you're paying. Basically, I just mentioned at one point, if you remember, that I think that there are certain definitions of like race realism that someone could propose, like biological race realism to be specific. They could propose that, and I feel as if technically those would be true. I just feel like they'd be equivocative. Like, so this idea that what we mean by race is referring to some sort of shared ancestry and like some biological context. I'm skeptical of that definition because A, I just don't see it as relevant to what we normally mean by race in academia or just in ordinary context. And then B, like if it is true, like I think there's like a decent amount of evidence, so I might still feel like I need to look at it. But all in all, I feel as if like yeah, if like you redefine it to this idea of like geographical race, for instance, sure, like okay, then I'd agree. Like there seems to be a good amount of evidence. I think there's a good amount of like argument to be had. I would need to like second research that to be like okay, this is definitely not race realism because of either some conceptual thing or there's some set of predictions that have been made or some sort of descriptions that just don't accord with like the research. But I'm not really familiar with that stuff. I just feel like it's
well,
equivocating. Yeah.
so what I want to grant is a minute ago you said basically that it's trivial to like generate some kind of proprietary, I guess you didn't say proprietary, but to generate like a proprietary definition
Just
according
any
to
definition. Yeah. Yeah. You could even
yeah, like
have some that a community shares. Yeah.
I could have some that what?
So like a
Oh, that the
community of
community
people,
shares. Sorry,
yeah,
it
a
just
minority of
it didn't
community.
click.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it just didn't click right away when you said it. I couldn't tell the word.
Okay.
Yeah. So, let me just remember my train of thought. Oh yeah. So I would grant, I would grant that yeah, like of course it's the case that you can always like if you put the constraint that a community has to share it, it'll be obviously a whole different thing. But
No,
if you're
okay,
disallowed,
maybe I'm not being clear.
Yeah.
I'm just giving these as examples. I'm not saying this is necessarily the case or that's even my constraint.
No,
Just examples.
that's
Okay.
fine. I'm trying to grant actually part of what you said. So what I agree with is that there's like a trivial response that you can always give to get out of absolutely any problem in philosophy, right? And I don't know if you were making this exact point or if this kind of maybe like connects a bit to it, but like whatever, it's related. So I understand I can always just make up some definition according to which I don't have like some given problem that like I had with a previous definition or whatever, right? Like anyone, it's like weaseling. Like you can always weasel out by saying, "Oh, I actually mean this thing." But I think the kind of measure of whether it's weaseling, like setting all else held constant, there's not other shit to indicate like you have like previous video footage of them like defining it in the way that they're now saying they don't, or like setting aside any shit like that. I'm generally not going to consider it weaseling if I can look in like multiple dictionaries and like find definitions like that. Like it's common enough that it's showing up in like multiple dictionaries. It's looking at that point like it's untenable to me to say that they're like weaseling on their definition. Like they mean something that is pretty. No, I'm not saying. Sorry, I should be clear that I'm not saying that you're implying that, but I just want to kind of clear up that like when I'm using race, what I want to say is I'm not referring to something that we both agree is trivially false, or else I shouldn't say trivially because it's not trivial, but it's like we're not agreeing. I'm not using the term to refer to a concept that we both agree is like pretty obviously false, right? Like I'm using it to refer to, like I mean, I don't want to be like Mr. Dictionary Man here, but you just look at these and it's like, you see shit like this all over the place. Like one of the main groups to which people are often considered to belong based on physical characteristics they are perceived to share, such as skin color, eye shape, or like I don't know, like what's the Wikipedia one? I think also it's like
look at my video. I showed those. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, grouping of human. Okay, so forgive me for repeating myself. Maybe just for the people listening.
Like
a race is a group of humans based on shared grouping of humans based on shared physical or social qualities. So it's like, it's not, those kind of definitions don't entail any like what we would call like race realism, like what we'd see if we looked at like fucking like alt-right people arguing the kind of shit they argue. Like it's not going to entail that.
On, and maybe this is like we could get into the interpretation of these. So for instance, right, believing that what we mean by race, for instance, is, or what we tend to mean by race is like some sort of like biogeographical shared ancestry or something along those lines, right? I think those things technically do entail a type of race realism, like specifically like geographical race. And that's like the one that I think like people like JF will use. So this idea that there are like geographical groups, or rather biogeographical groups who come from certain descendants, certain ancestry, certain lineages. And from those, we can determine whether or not people are of those like particular ancestries and then make sort of like statistics about those ancestries.
Yeah, like, see, so here's how I react when I hear that. I go like, that sounds complicated. That sounds like it has a lot of science in it. I don't have any idea how that's going to pan out. And based on some of the debates I've seen with alt-right people, I'm like skeptical that shit like that is going to make much sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you do agree that, like, say I take the definitions that aren't explicit. So here's what we have. Okay, we have a bunch of definitions of racism. We have some that explicitly, like it's just undeniable, they entail race realism, right?
Yep.
And then we have others where it's ambiguous. And when I point to the ambiguous ones,
even on like the same source,
like my whole point too is like this argument's not. It'll work on some definitions, but it won't work on others, and those other ones aren't like hyper proprietary. So your reply to that was to point out, well, even within that subset, that proper subset of the definitions of racism that don't necessarily entail race realism, it's like some of them still like arguably do. And it's like I can grant that too, but it's like what we don't get to, and I don't even think you'd try to argue this probably, is that the entire rest of the definitions are going to have that connotation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably have to assume something inherent about each of those definitions, which, I mean, someone could define race realism or just race as like whether or not I think that people run or something like that, and then be like, okay, obviously I'm not going to deny that, right?
Well,
so
well,
yeah, obviously.
and and I'll just
And
say
there's
something here,
majority
which
definitions, right? That like geographical race, I don't think that, and that's the point I made in the video. I get that's a definition held among like certain academics, specifically in like biology, for instance, or that's some that people even online hold, like alt hype or JF or people like that, right? So it's not like just one particular person thinks this, or even like two or three. It's like probably thousands, if not maybe even like tens of thousands. I just think that misses the like broader conversation's point, right? I feel like it's talking about something, significantly different from what is ordinarily being talked about.
yeah, I'm
Mhm.
inclined to think that. Well, okay, I guess I don't really know what. So this is like a bit of. Okay, how do I say this? We can have a discussion about what we think people mean. And I suspect we don't have radically divergent intuitions about that. We're not going to be able to really give arguments about this kind of stuff because we're kind of just
Mhm.
going off of like, our argument is just going to amount to like, well, I won't even try to render it, but we're going largely just off of our like impressions here. You could put it forward as an argument, but it's going to be trivial for the other person to challenge
Yeah,
it.
maybe we could use like
So,
like hypotheticals to test whether or not you think certain standards are the case or certain
well, and
implications. Yeah, and even
yeah,
then,
and
those are like still intuitive.
it's just it's hard to figure out always what ordinary language is doing. Like I like the thought of ordinary language philosophy. I like the idea that like we try to capture concepts as they exist in the public.
Mhm.
Um, like when I see all these crazy people attacking like gender or something, it's like I'm interested to some extent in trying to like capture what the public meaning. Well, I should say the public meaning I think is just sex, but like the public meaning among people who take gender to be distinct from sex is right. I'm interested in kind of like capturing that to see if the critiques go through or something. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's like we can try to do analysis and try to see what we think people mean, but that's going to be a kind of hard thing to argue, and I think we're going to largely agree about that. But what I'm looking for is kind of a concession. Well, I guess maybe concession is putting it strongly because you probably haven't even disagreed with this, but I'm looking for us to agree that given that they have a particular kind of definition, a kind that
Uh-huh.
isn't like radically proprietary that you can find in like most of the dictionaries, that
Uh-huh.
kind of criticism isn't going to like go through.
Yeah. I would just accuse them of equivocating like I did in the original video.
Well, here, can I
Yeah.
say something else about? So this I can't
Mhm.
make an argument for. So you'll just have to,
Okay.
kind of
Yeah,
determine
I'll
if
just
you
hear you
agree,
out. Go
with
for
me
it.
or not. So I'm inclined to agree with you when I look at popular usage of race. Like I don't really think people are thinking something geographical. Like it doesn't really seem to me like what people are referring to. If I sat there, I could probably think of some like kind of
When people
examples
are
why
like
that's the
I'm
case.
like black, they probably mean something along the lines of like, if you look at my like, and obviously I'm like overcomplicated, but they'll be like, yeah, like, I'm African American, my people come from Africa. I feel like that's not that hard to believe, at least for me personally.
I think the idea that it's about ancestry is less like untenable than that it's about geography. I don't think people are really thinking about geography. It could be wrong, but
Mm.
what I also don't think is that people have any kind of like detailed like scientific view. Now, maybe you disagree here and you think that they have those like race
No, I don't
relations.
think they have like 42 like research
No,
papers.
I'm not. Obviously, I'm not saying. Yeah, okay, I don't mean that. I just mean like I'm not convinced that they have really like the kind of like scientific like false beliefs that you think they have. They might very well. That could be the case. No skin off my back if they do. But what I suspect is most of these people probably don't know shit about genetics. They probably don't really know anything. They probably just looking at physiology and there's some kind of like fuzzy categorization going on
Mhm.
based on like shared like physiological shit. Like that's what I would personally guess. Does that seem implausible to you? Like you think most people have these kind of scientific beliefs?
I think it's like two parts. I think it's one, like a broad sort of like not even essential or essentialist like category of what it means to be, for instance, like white, right? Like they might have a set of like traits like light skin, maybe some range of hair colors, some range of hair types. Yeah, like obviously that.
Yeah.
But I also think like people will kind of determine that partially on like geography because when someone says like I'm African American, you think oh their people comes from Africa like on some level, right? Or do you disagree? I think you're like Canadian, so maybe it's not the same for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Canadian, but like, of course, African American is associated with fucking Africa. Like you think,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, like,
Just
well,
want to
yeah,
make sure.
obviously, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
No, I'm just saying I don't think this is kind of a side point. We don't need to discuss this, but it's just if we
Mhm.
agree on this, then it just makes everything easier. If we
Yep.
happen to, so I'm just throwing it out there.
Yep.
Yeah, I just think that most people don't think much about science, and they just have some vague idea of like the people who look like this are like black and the people who look like this are Asian, and they're just looking for things like, you know, like eye shape and like skin color and stuff like that. And there might be like peripheral scientific beliefs, but like I'm kind of just skeptical of that. Like I think it's more...
tell them like explicitly, or if you ask them like, what do you think race is, what is a black person, they'll be like, okay, so number one, they have certain alleles, number two, like, yeah, I don't think that, yeah,
right,
or even
okay,
like yeah, or they're from this part of like Africa, like no, they're not going to be like, oh, he's sub-Saharan African, yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, I'm not gonna have like an argument about that, because that's gonna be, you're gonna have to like kind of ask people about their meaning or do an experiment to like test their meaning or some shit like that, and that I don't have any of that. But I think we both agree it seems implausible that they have any, like, obviously the 50 papers thing is like, of course not, but even something like mildly scientific, not that strong, it's like it still seems implausible. Like it just seems like they have a cluster of fucking traits. They're mostly like physical shit, and that's kind of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, right. So, and I think that, so when I look in the dictionary, I guess this, I'm hoping that I just state this and we agree, because this is my last point of contention. I really just had the two, the whether it's my position or whatever, if we agree in this thing. So, if race in the argument you gave, well, wait, let's not refer to the argument anymore. Let's just refer to...
Yeah, just like the argument in question. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and I more just want to talk about whether there's an argument for the claim that someone who is that racism entails either a false belief or acting out of accord with a norm that one has if they're perfectly rational, right? Out of accord with a norm that every perfectly rational agent has, or false belief, right? I'm looking for an argument that is the case. And I think we actually agree here that it's going to be very easy to give an argument like that if we take a definition of race, which, again, they're not super proprietary. There are definitions like this. They're right out there that entails like race realism. And it's going to be not easy to give an argument like that if we take a definition that's like fuzzier, like it's about some set of physical traits. They're not necessarily committed to that scientific shit. So can we agree that whether the argument goes through, it's just going to be a matter of what definition you use, and there's perfectly plausible...
they're like minority definitions that large amounts of people share. Yep.
Yeah, there's perfectly plausible definitions that go both ways, and we don't actually even like further. We don't actually have a reason to think like one is used more than the other. In fact, it sounds like we're actually
okay. The only reason
we're even agreeing about that actually.
I think they're more or less in the same ballpark of like, you know, general uses. Like I don't think one is just used by one person. They're more or less in like broader community context. It's just of the literature I've seen, right? Like for instance, I think it's the American Biological Anthropologist Association. You look at that, for instance, and they're talking about like race essentialism, about biological race realism and stuff like that. Says to me like, okay, that's at least like kind of what they're getting at least out here in like American academics about that subject. You look through the definitions, and they're more so talking about like features, like, you know, I think they even mentioned like skin color or things like that. You look at Wikipedia. So it seems like these generally seem to point in that direction, but absolutely there are journals that use this geographical race idea. I've seen people in day-to-day life use this kind of idea. There are even little intuitions that I have, or little like cases I can refer to in my personal life that make me think like, oh yeah, more or less. I think some people might actually mean this. Like, you know, I was saying a second ago, when people say like, you know, I'm black, they mean a lot of the time African-American in the sense of my people descend from Africa, right? So that might even be like an example of that kind of belief actually potentially being there about the concept of race for a lot of people. And I don't think that's as uncommon as like proprietarily possible. Like, I don't think it's just like one person saying it, obviously.
Proprietarily possible might have been a misspeak. Just to be clear, proprietary is just saying it's like it's your
like super private.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like I define couch as like a star. It's like, okay, that's your proprietary definition there. But yeah, so okay, so yeah, like, and I should say, I think that what academic journals say is actually like not going to be the most relevant thing here. And the reason for that is we're talking about public language, right? And like the general public aren't anthropologists. They're just like people. And what we're talking about, you know, like we're talking about common use. So, okay. But yeah, I do grant that, you know, there's going to be, I wouldn't contest that there's anthropology texts that say the kind of stuff that you're saying. So do we agree then, or do we still disagree about this proposition? The argument is going to go through so there's two kinds of definitions.
I thought we agreed on that. Yeah.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. So let me just restate it perfectly clearly and just make sure we agree. So there's two kinds of definitions. Some entail race realism, some don't. They're both perfectly common. It's not clear that one is used more than the other. And according to one type of definition, the argument goes through. According to another, it's not clear that there's going to be an argument that goes through.
Yeah, like similarly, like if someone does define gender as sex, they might be of the position that like gender is biological. And like, obviously you would just respond to those people like they're kind of missing the point of the broader conversation. But if we grant that concept or we grant the definition, sure, they're probably correct. But, obviously it feels like it's just not talking to the original conversation. So I think, yes, like in that sense.
So we're close here because we're agreeing about the fact of the matter, which is that whether there is going to be a straightforward argument that, again, the proposition we're looking at here is racism entails a false belief or a violation of a norm that any perfectly rational agent would have. We agree that whether there's going to be an argument for that proposition, at least one that we can both like clearly see, we agree there'll be an argument under the definitions that entail race realism. We agree it's not clear how you're going to get an argument like that under the definitions that don't. And then it sounds like it sounds like we agree on all that. And it sounds like the part that we disagree on is you think that people who are using the other kind of definition that doesn't entail race realism are somehow like, they're like missing the point of the conversation, which would imply actually that like I'm missing the point. And I don't think I am. I think I'm using we agree. It's like a
missing the point in the sense of this is what race is ordinarily meant. And I don't think you're talking to the ordinary concept. I think you're talking about a different type of, and this is, I could tell you the journals if you gave me some time to find them. Like I haven't read them in a little while, but there are some journals that basically say like, yeah, there's race in kind of the ordinary sense. And that one seems to be a lot of the time very uncontroversially considered false. But, there are more academic contexts like this idea of geographical race, which, the science isn't completely in yet. So it seems as if that one's very, very controversial. So absolutely. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, we're a bit divided there. Because we're agreeing about when the argument goes through or not. We're just disagreeing about like popular the scope usage and historic usage and stuff. Well, because it sounds like you want to say like, sure, like Isaac, what you're saying is like true, but you're like fixating on a kind of definition that like nobody uses or something like that. Is that like unfair, or am I getting you? Right.
No, not that nobody uses it. I just think it's like a minority. Like you could have a very large and loud minority. But if you ask me to like ballpark my intuitive feeling, like I'd say it's definitely less than half of people and maybe closer to like, 20 to 30% of people I think talk in that kind of context. Right.
Wait, and by that context, you mean geographical race?
Yes.
Okay, that's the confusion. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about I'm just talking about the whole set of definitions that don't entail race realism, right? So geographical.
Oh, any definition whatsoever? Oh, okay.
Because we both agree that the most common way people talk about race, as far as we can tell, is actually not going to commit them to any fucking geographic shit or any scientific shit. Really, like they probably are just kind of looking at characteristics.
It might. So this is my thing. I think if they affirm like the concept that's described in dictionaries, I think it would for a lot of them. But obviously there are going to be a lot of discrepancies, like whether or not they obviously even agree with it, or maybe they might, mean it in such a way that isn't referring to that. I mean, people like Nick Fuentes, for instance, believe in this isn't even like racism in the ordinary sense. I still call it racism, like some weird spiritual racism, like black people literally have different souls. Or so. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go out on a fucking limb and say Nick is not he's not representative of the average person. I know you're not saying it, but
no, I know.
Yeah. Okay, so
I think we agree on that.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, I think that there's like perfectly common definitions which are used widely, right? Like 30% is that's already enough for me. But I don't think that we can really even get there. Like I think so. Actually, like we could stop there because that's enough for us to agree. We can be like, there's perfectly common definitions according to which the argument actually won't go through. I won't restate the fact that it does go through on some. I'm just fixating on the part where it doesn't. that's what's of interest to me. We can agree that there's like perfectly common definitions according to which it's not obvious there's an argument that so and so is do I have to repeat it or do we remember the proposition?
No, I understand.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, so here I'll just say I want to make sure we perfectly agree. Proposition that racism entails a false belief or a commitment to a violation of a norm that any perfectly rational agent holds. We agree that there's perfectly common definitions according to which it's not obvious that there's an argument for that that kind of claim.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then the only leftover thing that's really clearing it up. The only leftover thing is just we seem to have a kind of different intuition about what people mean when they say race. I thought we agreed that most people are not like, they're probably not thinking about it really any science shit, or maybe they have like a little bit of.
To me, it's like similar to when people will say, "Oh, America was discovered in the 1400s by like Europeans." Like, I don't think they like even have a grasp a lot of the time of what that even implies. I think they'll just kind of hear it and then just accept it. I think it's similar to that. I think it's very limited, and it just has certain implications or certain commitments that they're not even aware of.
Okay, but yeah, I just don't know if that I don't think that we have to disagree about anything there though, because like the only we agree about the major points, that whether there's an argument depends on the definition. We agree that it's not, the argument there doesn't really represent my view. That so we agree on the main things. It's just we disagree about what people typically mean. But like just to be clear, because like if people mean something that doesn't entail any kind of race realism, like that's perfectly plausible under these kind of definitions, like a group of people related by that's common descent, so that's the descent one.
I what you mean, like race realism in like the original sense you're discussing. I know.
Well, race realism is like,
you mean like race realism, like
I'm not even
racist. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just talking about race. Like, I don't. Race realism is like an ideology. Like, it's using that term makes it way too. It sounds connected to alt-right shit that I don't believe or accept any of that.
Okay, but, we could just call it like BRR, like something like that.
like my own.
Yeah.
I mean, like we can just say like look. Well, do we want a little taxonomy here? Do we want a race segregation for our race definitions? A little taxonomy of definitions. So we can just call we can say like race alpha is like definitions that entail race realism, and race beta is definitions that don't entail race realism. So like in any dictionary, there's going to be a ton of like race beta definitions, right? And those race beta definitions, I think it's like very plausible that those capture what most people mean. Do you think it's implausible that the race beta definitions capture what most people mean? Again, these definitions are things like, one of many
the fuzzies, groups, like skin color and
it's like physical characteristics perceived to share, skin color, like I really think that's kind of what most people are probably getting at, to be honest. Do you think that's
I don't know how uncommon I think that is, but if I had to vaguely describe, I think that's actually fairly uncommon. Like it goes back to the thing I said. Like if I ask someone they're black, they presumably are going to mean, at least on some level, for like a very significant, like I would assume over 50%. Like if I ask someone, at least out here in the United States, are you black? They're going to assume, am I asking on some level, do their people descend from the continent of Africa, right? And that just sounds intuitive to me. I'm not saying that I have some statistical data, but that just sounds intuitive to me.
Yeah, probably like heredity shit that's like in most people's minds. I'm just saying what I don't think is in most people's minds is like the kind of like scientific claims you need to like get to it being like clearly false or like violating of some norm all the rational agents are committed to. Because like we can agree like the folk notion probably like connects loosely to like heredity and probably connects loosely to geography, although I think the heredity connection is probably stronger based on my experience, but I don't really know.
I think it is stronger, but I do still think there's like an unneglectable aspect of like geography that people will consider on some level. Like I feel like it's got to be at least 50%. Like you ever ask someone if they're black? Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like, and they'll mention like, oh, my mom's white, my dad's black, and then their dad will mention like, I'm from here and here. I found out recently through 23andMe, like, oh, my family's from this part of Africa, but they also have some connections to these. I feel like that at least sounds realistic, and I've had people say that kind of stuff to me, and I've had situations like that. So it just feels very easy to be like, I don't know. There's a geographical aspect that's maybe lesser discussed, but I think it's still nonetheless there. Actually, I think it is lesser discussed. I think it's just outright lesser discussed. To be clear,
I think there's at least a fucking association in people's minds loosely with geography for a lot of people. They're like black equal Africa, Asian equal like Asia. Like I think that's going on, sure. But I'm just saying like a lot of the race beta definitions like admit of some level of like they admit of the concept of race being constituted like in part by things like heredity or geography, right? I'm just pointing out race beta definitions don't have to not be constituted by those kind of things. They just have to not entail these like false claims about
like science and stuff, or like
and when it's clear that that's what I mean by race beta definition, like do you really think that most people are using like race alpha?
Yeah, I don't that sounds like
okay. All right, we have divergent intuitions there. So that's the kind of thing that like, I mean, we could sit here trying to give intuition pumps, but it's gonna be like I don't think I have anything particularly strong. I doubt you do either. We're kind of going.
Well, I'll say this there because I feel like you agree on some level. Like there's just I feel like when you talk to most people, right, or at least most of the people I've ever talked to, like I said, maybe you just have different experiences, but really like. When you ask people they're black, they don't typically like refer to having people descend from Africa.
I think that they probably have something about Africa like in their head.
Oh, you just don't think it's like a strong thing they're hitched to, and so you would see that as kind of like beside, or it could be there, but it's more associative rather than like constitutive.
Well, I think I guess associative versus constitutive is a slightly weird way to put it for reasons I won't get into, but it's like. I just think that it's probably a cluster concept, and I think it's probably not like, like heredity might not be like an essential component of it or something like this, or it just seems like it's a cluster of things. It's like a bunch of physical characteristics, and I'm not against the idea that there's also some shit in there about heredity or like something like this, because if you
you're just like I agree, essential for like the average person's cons. Okay, sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they are. It might.
Like there are people who think they're like black and will affirm that they're black, but not even have people come from like Africa in the meaningful sense of that phrase.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I agree with you about your intuition pump about if you like ask black people, I forget exactly how you put it, but like you ask them about like Africa, they're gonna be like, yeah, like me and my people come from Africa. Like clearly, like I'm not gonna deny that there's like some connection between Africa and like what people mean when
you just think there are also a lot of people who don't do that. Okay.
Well, I just think that it might be that like you could, for instance, have a concept where like it's like a list of 10 things, and if you check like 5 boxes, you're black or something, and like heredity is like one of them, but like you wouldn't even need to check that. And I think that probably aligns with how a lot of people use the word. Just like you said, there's going to be plenty of people in like the States, for instance, who everyone's going to agree like that person's black, and they have like no fucking like connection to like Africa or some shit like this. But like I mean, no connection. I guess everyone comes from Africa in a sense, but unless you're a race realist and you think that white people had some like separate origin and some like I don't know. Have you heard those theories? It's pretty funny.
I've heard a little bit about like alt hype and people like this.
Yeah, like I forget what it is, but they have this like theory about like white people like having this like separate like evolution and like not coming from like. If something like that turns out being true, that'd be really funny, but it sounds like some conspiracy theory shit. So yeah, okay. So when it comes to popular usage, like we're really quibbling over like kind of like a side point right now because we agree about the main things. We're just disagreeing about popular usage. I guess that where we're at is just you think it's that people have more scientific shit baked into the meaning of race when they talk about race than I do. But even on your view, you're still saying that like you suspect there's like a good 20-30% of people who are using a definition that's not gonna entail that. Yeah. Okay. So like, okay. So we'll I think we're gonna probably just agree to disagree about what we think the main usage is, because it's a very hard thing to establish unless you really want to sit here like trying to give intuition pumps. I find those kind of discussions are like, who the fuck cares? We agree about the main thing. We could try if we want to, but whatever. And then even without agreeing about common usage, we can agree about what definitions it goes through on or doesn't,
Mhm.
or sorry, what definitions we can generate the kind of argument against that proposition on or not. And we can agree that like minimally, like some fucking noticeable chunk of people, like, I mean, you said like something like 20 or 30. I'm not going to put a percentage of it, but I'm just going to say like an amount of people that's like clearly fucking visible, and like you're going to find them if you just go and like, talk on the street about racism. Yeah, we agree that they're not using it. Okay, all right. So yeah, I'm not sure there's any disagreement at this point. Do you? Well, aside from the popular usage thing, do you see
Like
anything
the
still in
intuitive stuff.
contention?
Yeah, I don't think we have a huge substantive disagreement. No.
Okay, so something I would appreciate, if you don't
Uh-huh.
mind, I would appreciate if you can put in the description or a pinned comment or something that's actually like, just be like, I mean, I don't want to tell you what to fucking do, but I would.
If you want to leave a comment, I'll pin it and just be like true or something like that if you want.
Yeah, I could leave another if you want, but all I want is just something that conveys that it's not really. Like,
so you don't feel like you're being like misrepresented. Okay, yeah, sure.
I think people are going to look at that and think that I make this argument you have there. I think that's what they're going to think, and it's just like I
think there's a non-negligible amount of people that will do that, and my thing is just like I just tend to dismiss those people because I feel like they always come away with the most uncharitable interpretations anyways. I felt like the people that video was intended for, which were like people that I'm friends with or that I talk to, I don't think they would come away uncharitably. So I just didn't feel the need to like make a 50-minute long video explaining. Just to be clear, I don't think this is what he intentionally means. I think he accidentally implied that. Yeah, I just didn't feel like doing that because it's like I feel like those people like stretch anyways. But yeah, I'm absolutely down to put something in the description, or if you want to like leave a comment, I'll just be like, "Yep, agreed," or I'll pin it or whatever. We can do both.
Yeah, if you like, I would. Okay, I can do that if you want, but if you don't mind, because it's better if it's in the description than a pinned comment. Like if you just put something there, like I've spoken to Ask Yourself, and he doesn't sign off on this argument or something like that.
I got you right now. Sure.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. Any other shit while we're here, or are we all good?
Actually, hold on a second.
Okay.
Give me one.
Yeah, the other people can talk now. I don't think we're really debating anymore.